All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated. Go into private session, please, Madam Court Officer. I'm sorry, call the case first.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is case KSC BC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Recep Salimi, and Jakub Kasnić.
Thank you. And now into closed session, into private session.
Your Honors, we are now in public session.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We need the witnesses.
No, that would help, wouldn't it? Yes, please bring the witnesses. All these details, you know. Susanna, what is it? Before the witnesses come in, Mr. Dixon, can you give us the full range of the document that you wanted to have admitted and has an MFI, the chapter or whatever it is?
Yes, Your Honours, I will do that. I'll get that and pass it on as soon as I have the exact range. Yes, I'll do it right away. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Prinzen and Dr. Black. Dr. Black, we're glad to have you back. Thank you for being here. We're going to continue your testimony now. Before we begin, I remind victims' counsel and counsel for the parties when proceeding with their questioning to indicate to whom their question is being directed by addressing the expert by their name. Before you speak, please identify yourself by name and then respond to the question you are being asked so that the transcript accurately reflects which expert is speaking. I also remind you to please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you do not understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will clarify. Also, please remember to try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of the facts and circumstances upon which you will be questioned. Further, regarding the hard copies of the documents you brought with you, the panel emphasizes that if you cannot recall something and therefore wish to consult these documents to refresh your memory, please notify the panel before doing so. I repeat that this should only be done in the event that you need to make that reference because you can't recall. You should not read directly from these documents. I remind you that you are still under an obligation to tell the truth as stated by you in your solemn declaration. Please also remember to speak into the microphone and to wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and then speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. If you feel the need to take a break, please let us know. And yesterday you followed those directions very well, and we appreciate that. So we proceed now. The Thaçi defense will have some questions for you on cross-examination. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Black, Ms. Prinzen. My name is Maciej Pustaj. I represent Mr. Thaçi, and I'll be asking you some questions today. And I would like to start with the instructions that you were given when preparing the report for this case, so the report that you co-authored. And if we can put up the letter of instructions that we already saw yesterday, and which we have SV00034 MFI. Okay, so first of all, just to make sure, do I understand correctly that you both seen this letter when preparing your report? So you were provided with that letter. So if we can start with Dr. Black.
Good morning, this is Dr. Black. So as you'll see, the letter of instruction is dated the 8th of November 2024. And as you may recall yesterday from the beginning when we discussed my CV, I joined IMO in January 2025. So I did not read this letter in November 2024. But caught up with the already preparations that began when I joined IMO in January.
So, when you joined in January, then you reviewed the letter while you were working on the report?
I don't recall if I reviewed the literal letter, but I discussed the instructions with my colleague who had reviewed the letter with, most likely you did it with another colleague at that time. I don't know. Perhaps you can answer.
Yeah, so maybe then I'll ask Ms. Prinzen. So you've reviewed the letter in November when you were working on the report?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and so was it then you who explained the instructions to Dr. Black, or?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Understood. So if we can go to the next page in this letter and part 3, language of the report. Okay, so this provision here states that the report needs to be provided to the trial panel in English, the working language of the panel in this case. It is understood that IMO's working language is Dutch. Victims' Counsel will facilitate the translation of the report into English. IMO will review and authorize the translation of the report in English before it is signed and submitted to the panel. So you are aware of that provision in the,
Yes.
in the letter? Okay. So just to make sure that I understand this paragraph correctly, so is it the case that your report was originally drafted in Dutch?
Yes, that's the case.
Okay. And then it was translated by the Victims' Counsel? Or his team?
This is Mrs. Princeton speaking. Yes, that is correct. And then it came back to us, and we reviewed it to see if there were any corrections needed.
Okay. Were you aware of the fact that the Dutch version was not disclosed by the Victims' Counsel in this proceeding?
This is Mrs. Princeton. I'm not aware. I don't know which versions were disclosed.
Dr. Black, I suppose that's the main answer?
Yeah, I don't have that information, no.
Okay, and just focusing on that last sentence, so IMO will review and authorize the translation of the report into English before it is signed and submitted to the panel. So if we just can put up the report itself, which we have SV00035 MFI, and if we go to the page with the signature, which is V000032, so we see here that the report was indeed signed, but it was not signed by either of you, was it?
This is Catherine Black speaking. So what I see here is it says a PP before the name of Annemiek Keunen, the director of IMO, which the PP stands, I think, for per...
on behalf, I would say.
Yes, of us.
Well, it says on behalf of Mr. Keunen, right?
I think this is Mrs. Princeton speaking. I think we meant it like it is on behalf of ourselves. So we gave her permission to sign the report because we had we arranged that the report was ready before the 1st of May, and we were on holiday, so we couldn't sign the report at that specific moment when the translation was corrected.
So let me take this step by step. So do you know whose signature it is in the report?
Yes,
So whose signature is that?
it's our director.
But it says on behalf of the director, which to me would indicate that it was signed by someone else, not the director.
Okay, then this is Mrs. Brinson speaking, then that's not the way it is meant to be.
So you can confirm that that signature is the signature of your director?
Yes.
So you just said that it was you who reviewed, or let me ask this. So did I understand you correctly that it was you, meaning you, Ms. Prinzen, and you, Dr. Black, who actually reviewed the English translation?
Yes.
Yes.
And despite that fact, it was not you who signed the report at the end?
That's correct, because speaking for myself, Mrs. Brinson, I was on a holiday at that moment.
Dr. Black, you were also on the holiday?
I don't recall if I was on holiday, but I was probably not physically present at IMO to physically sign the report. As you may recall, yesterday I work for another institution, mostly clinical work. So,
Understood.
yeah.
Well, why wouldn't you sign the report, Ms. Prinzen, after you came back from the holiday?
Because we had a set date when the report should be finished, and it took a long time to finish the report, to get it translated in English, and then we had a lot of corrections for the translation. So before it came back, we wanted to finish it before my holiday, but we didn't. It just...
When you say that you had a deadline, the deadline set by whom?
It was in, how do you say that? We discussed the deadline with the Victims' Council, so it's a deadline that was set by both of us.
So it was an agreed deadline?
Yes, it was.
Could have been moved?
I don't know, maybe.
Understood. I think you already mentioned that you corrected a number of issues in the English translation before it was signed by, I understand, the director. Correct?
Yes, that is correct.
But there were still some issues left in the English translation even after that exercise, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you mentioned, and you corrected some additional issues during your preparational session, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
There might be other issues in this English version, correct?
There might be. It's a lengthy report, and as you well know, our first language is Dutch, so it's sometimes very difficult to explain in English, in professional words, what we mean.
I'm not a native speaker myself, so I fully understand. Just one last question on this topic of language. And this is for you, Ms. Princeton, because it's about the other two reports that we were discussing, so for case 4 and 5. Was the process there the same? So they were drafted in Dutch, then translated?
Yes.
Yes. And so that means that in those reports, there potentially also can be mistakes in the English translation, correct?
It could be.
Yeah. And to the best of my knowledge, again, would it surprise you that we haven't been disclosed the Dutch versions of those reports?
Sorry, what is your question?
Were you aware of the fact that the Dutch versions of those two reports were not disclosed?
I wasn't aware.
Understood. If we can go back to the letter of instructions, so V00034. And if we can again go to the second page, please. And the last part, limitation. So this is something that you already discussed yesterday. And I just wanted to make sure. So, it's stated here that you were not asked to conduct an individual medical examination of the participating victims. And I think we agreed yesterday that indeed you did not do the medical examination.
This is Mrs. Brinson speaking. Yes, that is correct.
That is correct. And would you agree with me that as a result of this, mainly this particular instruction, your report prepared for this case actually does not adhere to the Istanbul Protocol that you mentioned several times yesterday?
This is Mrs. Princeton speaking. For the expert report, that is correct. It's not a medical legal examination. However, the Istanbul Protocol is based on scientific knowledge, and so we use the Istanbul Protocol, among other things, to make the report. So it's not based on the principles because it's not a medical legal examination, but we used the protocol for information for the report.
But you would agree with me that the report that you submitted does not adhere to the requirements for the medical report set forth in the Istanbul Protocol?
It's not.
Let-
No, it doesn't. It doesn't follow the guidelines for a medical legal examination because it's not a medical legal examination.
Let me maybe ask it more specifically and specifically with the text of the protocol. So if we can put up the protocol, we have it as DHT 06102 to DHT 06125. And if we can go to page DHT 06108. It should be article, there we go. So medical expert report, article 199. And if we go to the next page, we see that this report, being the medical report, should include at least the following, and then there is a list. And for example, very first point, the circumstances of the interview. So given that you did not conduct any interviews, obviously,
Yes.
that you cannot adhere with that. And if you just scroll down, point E, a record of authorship. So based on that provision, there should be your signature in the report, correct?
That's correct.
As we already agreed, there is no, your signature is not in the report, correct?
That's correct.
One more question about this Istanbul Protocol, and Your Honors, I would ask this to be marked for identification, and we'll make potentially submissions on it.
Please assign an MFI to that document.
Thank you, Your Honor. I assume it's just these 2 pages or the entire document?
I think these 2 pages are actually. And yes, and potentially the cover sheet so that it's clear what the document is.
Thank you. So the cover sheet with the ERN DHT 06102 and 2 additional pages with ERN DHT 06108 to DHT 06109 will receive MFI number 1D00260. Classification is public.
Thank you. So staying on the topic of the Istanbul Protocol, I believe today and as well yesterday, you, Ms. Princeton, noted that it includes guidelines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I would now like to show you how Dr. Para, you co-authored the report with Dr. Para in case 4, how he described the Istanbul Protocol. So if we can put up the transcript from case 4, from 21st August 2023, and if we can go to page 2259, please. And if you can scroll down just a little bit, perfect. So here, starting at line 14, the witness Lozano Para. So the Istanbul Protocol has been published by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. It was first published in 2001. There has been a renewed version in 2022, and we use that protocol. And this protocol sets out international standards on how to do a medical legal assessment when investigating alleged victims of torture or inhumane treatment. So you would agree with Dr. Spara's testimony that the Istanbul Protocol sets out international standards on how to do a medical legal assessment, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And if we can stay at this document and go to page 2328, so this is still your testimony with Dr. Para. 2328. 8, and we need, if we can scroll down, okay, perfect. So here, starting at line 10, again, Dr. Para speaking. I agree with this, what is stated here. I think it's important to know that a medical examination according to the Istanbul Protocol can be used in legal proceedings as substantial evidence. So based on Dr. Spara's testimony here, and you testified together with him in that case, only examination conducted according to the Istanbul Protocol can be used in legal proceedings. That's what Dr. Para said, correct?
I object to that question. It's not for the witness to determine what use can be made of a report in legal proceedings. It's a legal question, not a medical one.
Would you agree with Dr. Spara's opinion that Istanbul Protocol, whether the Istanbul Protocol was used or not, is relevant for the use of the medical report?
This is Mrs. Branson speaking. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't understand it.
Would you agree with Dr. Spara's testimony that the question of whether the report, medical report, was prepared in line with Istanbul Protocol or not, is important for how the report can be used?
Well, it's the same question,
No.
but rephrased. And the witness has already said that the expert's report in case 6 doesn't follow the Istanbul Protocol.
Exactly right. She's already explained to you this is not an examination. It's not a medical report. It's the expert's opinion.
Okay, fair enough. I'll move on. Going back to the report prepared for this case, again, as we discussed yesterday, besides the two of you, there is also the third author, right? Ms. Sten, did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe, you described this yesterday, and I think, and it's also in the preparation note, paragraph 11, you stated that she did 3 things, basically. Helped with the coding the data, correct? I apologize. Let's say Ms. Princeton.
Yes, that's
yes.
correct.
The literature search.
Yes, that is correct.
And had a supportive role with writing the report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And just to make sure, you did not provide this explanation of which specific tasks Ms. Sten undertaken in the report itself, correct?
That's correct.
Were there other people who helped with these activities? For example, the literature search?
No, there were not.
Mm-hmm. When you say that Ms. Steen had a supportive role in writing the report, does it mean that she wrote certain parts?
This is Mrs. Princeton speaking. Just to come back on my last answer, Ms. Steen helped with the literature search, but everything she did was under supervision of me and in communication with Dr. Black. So your question was, did she do the literature search alone, well, that's not. She did it under supervision, so every step she did was authorized by us.
Thank you for the explanation. Actually, that
Right.
question aimed at whether there were other people helping you besides Ms. Ten.
Oh, no, there were not.
Okay. So going back to the supportive role in writing the report, so does it mean that she wrote certain parts of the report?
She made an outline, and I did most of the writing.
So did she write some parts of the report or not?
She did write some parts or sentences.
And once again, we do not have those specific parts identified in the report. We do not know which specific parts you wrote.
No.
And I assume you
don't
would
know.
not be able to tell us as you see today which exact parts she wrote.
No, that's impossible.
Would you agree with me that if she wrote certain parts of the report, if we really wanted to know what exactly was meant by those parts of the report, we would need to ask Ms. Ten, correct?
No, I disagree because everything she did was in communication with us. She has the same information as we do.
Yes, but you do not know how she evaluated the information. You don't see to her head, right?
No, that's correct. I can't see through her head, as I can't see in your head. How do you say that? We discussed it, and I was the supervising role, and eventually the way the report was written was under our responsibility.
And
Or it's hard to explain. So I wrote the actual sentences. So what is stated is written by me, but she did some preliminary work. So she did an outline, and she helped doing. How do you say that? Ordenen. To.
Put in order.
Yeah, put in order certain information.
okay, so is it so a moment ago you said that she wrote certain parts, certain sentences. Now you are saying that she actually did not write anything?
Well, she did, but I reviewed them. Is it reviewed?
Can I add to this?
Go ahead, Dr. Black.
So this is how you would work if you work on a scientific article for a journal as well. It's probably the same in your profession as well, that the people, so Ms. Steen is a psychologist, and you probably also in the legal profession have people in your team who are doing a lot of who you give a request to look up a whole lot of number of the details, and in the end you are the one who has collected all their details and are here in court today, and they're working under your supervision, and that's actually really similar as in this process. And to say actually, well, we probably have multiple drafts of the documents with. Where you work on it collectively, so with tracking changes, and that in the end it's a process by 3 authors, and therefore it has 3 authors on it.
Understood. And if you cannot say whether if Ms. Ten was sitting today here or yesterday, her answers, her comments would be the same as yours. She potentially could disagree with you on certain points.
This is Mrs. Princeton speaking. Of course, you just said we cannot look in her head. So of course, I cannot predict what she would say.
Understood. Last point, you said that she helped with coding the data. What exactly do you mean by that? How exactly she helped?
This is Mrs. Princeton speaking. What I explained yesterday, we had 50 files, and some of the files had over 600 pages. So for the coding process. So for going through all these files, she helped, because this is not a process you can do alone.
So does it mean that you divided those 50 files among the three of you?
Among the two of us, Jet, Steen, and myself.
So Dr. Black, you were not involved in the coding process?
I did not do part of the coding process, no.
Understood. Okay. So then the conclusions from the coding process, those are conclusions based on what both you and Ms. Stan did.
Yes, so to give you an outline, the method and the categorization of the coding system, it's something we discussed with the three of us. The actual work, like coding, it's not something, it's just going through the files, coding, that's something that Jet and I did together. And then the results, to put them, how do you say it, to contract the results and to report them, that's something we did.
So basically, if we wanted to know what exactly was the process for half of the witnesses, we would need to talk to Ms. Stan.
No, because
No.
the process is the same as, we have everything outlined. If you need documents about this process, we could provide it. We have everything.
Yeah, but as we discussed yesterday, I believe those documents haven't been provided yet.
No, that's correct.
Just one point. You brought these notes together with you yesterday, these preparational notes or whatever it was called. Who prepared the document?
I did.
You did. Did you discuss the document with Ms. Stan?
No, I don't think so. I didn't.
So potentially, again, she could disagree with things that are in that document, correct?
No, that is incorrect, because this document, I knew you didn't have, we didn't have any information about the method in the document you have of the expert report. We do have those documents, so this document is a description of something we set out and the way we worked, and that's the way she worked as well as I worked and Mrs. Black worked. So it's a document that is known to the people who worked on the report.
Yeah. But she hasn't reviewed it. She hasn't seen it before you brought it.
It's a copy of something we already had in our possession because it describes our method.
Has she seen the specific document you brought or not?
This specific document, no.
Okay, moving to the report from the case 4. So, Dr. Black, you are kind of off the hook. So this is the report prepared by you, Ms. Prinsen, and Dr. Para. And you prepared that, so that report was prepared by you, Ms. Prinsen, as a psychologist, and by Dr. Para as a psychiatrist, correct?
That's correct.
And that means that part of this report was drafted on Dr. Para's psychiatrist input and parts were drafted based on your psychologist input. Would that be correct?
Partly, because our functions and our knowledge overlap. So it's a joint report, a joint examination.
But you would agree with me that you are not psychiatrist, right? You don't have the education.
That's correct.
So there are some conclusions which are made based on psychiatric knowledge.
In this report, the conclusions are based on both my knowledge as hers.
Let me put it differently. You wouldn't be able to write the report without her.
That's correct.
And given that fact, there might be some parts of the report that we would need to discuss with her if we want to get to how the conclusions were reached, right? Because they were reached based on her expertise.
I think Well, certain parts maybe.
And again, we don't have any identification in the report of which those parts would be.
No, but that's the same answer I gave just. It's a joint examination, so it's a joint conclusion in which we have a multidisciplinary view.
Yes, and as a part of that joint conclusion, the final conclusion, there are various inputs going into that. Some of those come from Dr. Para, and we would need to discuss those with Dr. Para.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honors. Those are my questions.
Salimi defense.
Thank you, Your Honors. Good morning, Ms. Prinsen and Dr. Black. I am Fortuna Sheremeti, and today I will be asking you some questions on behalf of Mr. Selimi. I'll start with Ms. Duna Prinsen. Mr. Laws yesterday rightly pointed out your CV and your work as a mental health psychologist. I couldn't fail but notice that the majority of your work throughout the years has been done with children. Is there a big difference dealing with children and dealing with adults when it comes to assessing psychological harm?
This is Mrs. Brinson speaking. That is correct. I followed different courses in child psychology. I worked a lot with children and their families. I never conducted medico-legal examinations on children because that was not my profession when I worked as a child psychologist. So I worked with a lot of trauma in children. However, if you work with children, you also have their parents in your room for treatment. So in that way, we also treat parents. So my medico-legal examination experience, it derives from my years for IMO. And I think the youngest ones we see are 16.
Thank you very much. Dr. Black, since you mentioned yesterday that you have been dealing with refugees and war veterans, maybe you can answer the next question. Would you agree that psychological symptoms such as anxiety, depression, traumatic stress can result from multiple factors, including war condition, displacement, or loss of family members?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
So the symptoms that you report in the report could just as well stem from those other experiences, not necessarily just from torture or captivity. Am I correct?
So which part of the which report are you referring to?
Very rightfully pointed out. I'm talking about the report you written in April 2025, so we're still on the first report. So the symptoms, the general symptoms you mentioned there, they can be also caused from the issues I mentioned, not necessarily only from torture and captivity, correct?
And are you talking about the first part or the second part of the report?
The report in general.
So in the report, we described what the literature says of symptoms that can arise from trauma. And in the second part of the report, we described the symptoms as reported by the VPPs in the files provided to us.
So I am correct in assuming that literature, scientific literature, agrees that post-traumatic depression, stress trauma can be caused from war conditions, displacement of people, losing a family member, not necessarily only torture and captivity.
No. All other traumatic experiences other than torture and captivity can cause depression, anxiety, and PTSD.
Thank you very much. Mr. Loss yesterday asked a part of this question, but I just want to take it a bit further. He referred to the instructions that Victims' Counsel gave you and made it clear, as did you during yesterday's session, that you were not instructed to conduct medical examinations. Just for reference, this is page 30 of yesterday's transcript, starting in line 14. And I'm going to read it. IMO is not asked by Victims' Counsel to conduct an individual medical examination of the VPPs. Therefore, the report will not be based on medical examination of the VPPs, and it is not expected that IMO will provide a medical diagnosis of each of the VPPs. To clarify this, in your report, you also say, nevertheless, the reported psychological symptoms align with what is found in scientific literature regarding the psychological consequences of torture and inhuman treatment. My question is this. If your findings cannot be considered representative or medically validated, what is the relevance of this comparison to scientific literature? And either one of you can answer.
Of course, I look at this from a medical standpoint. That is the standpoint the only standpoint that I have in this situation, and I would expect to find the symptoms that the symptoms and psychological problems that we've discussed, mainly PTSD, depression, anxiety, as described in the literature, in people who are victims of mistreatment and captivity. What I didn't necessarily expect, we would find that it would that they would report it so clearly in reports that weren't designed to collect those symptoms. This report is, of course, only for the use in this court. I think if the data was available to us, it would be relevant to publish as scientific literature, not because it's a very new finding that people who are victims of torture or captivity have symptoms like PTSD or depression and anxiety. It's widely known. I think the novelty of the finding, which would make it publishable, is that it comes up actually even in interviews that are not conducted to obtain it. When we know really from clinical practice how actually people so strongly avoid and underreport their symptoms, which is why the Istanbul Protocol goes into such detail of how to create circumstances in which to obtain testimony of symptoms.
Ms. Dune-Prinsen, do you want to add something to this?
Yes. I think it is important what I mentioned yesterday. For us, we are medical professionals, so for us, we cannot say anything about the value of the mentioning of symptoms in these proceedings in a legal context. However, from a medical point of view, these symptoms that are mentioned in these proceedings have value, and they align with what is known from the literature and from expertise. So we cannot validate that the symptoms come directly from the torture or the inhuman treatment, or that's not up to us. But medically spoken, this makes sense. And that's the same with the literature research. It's medical-based literature, psychologically based. So if you look at captivity, for example, and people are included that have experienced captivity, of course you could say, how can you how can you be sure that they were captive? That's a legal question. In medical science, the people that are included have stated that they have been undergoing this trauma, and that's the validity of this group in medical science.
That's exactly what I was getting at. So thank you for your answers. And I appreciate the differences between legal and medical sometimes when it comes to harm. So that's exactly what I wanted to point out, that this is actually an alignment that suggests only a general consistency that you're talking about in the first report. So thank you very much. Moving on to a methodology question, I'm interested to know, when you talked yesterday about the coding, you told us about categories and subcategories. Mr. Dixon already addressed how you did the categorization, but what I would want to know is a very technical issue, actually. Did you do the categorization and the coding manually, or did you use programs like NVivo or the like that does it for you?
Yes, this is Mrs. Princeton speaking. I think it's important to mention that maybe it wasn't really clear, but this categorization was not personally selected. So the categories were based on the DSM, our manual for psychiatric disorders, and the Istanbul Protocol, and psychological symptoms from the scientific literature. So it's not something we made up. It's based on those grounds. There is no computerized system that could do that. So it is made personally by going over the pages. Yes.
Thank you. Your Honors, I would like to ask 2 questions about Report 0405, so if we can go in private session.
Into private session, please, Madam Court Officer.
Your Honors, we are now in public session.
Go ahead, Ms. Shermeti.
Thank you very much. Moving on, in the summary of the report of April 2025, you state explicitly, and I'm going to read it, to give meaning to these findings, it is necessary to consider them in context. The psychological symptoms were reported by victims during testimonies in a legal setting. Given that you mentioned the importance of context, have you considered the broader context, namely that these victims were living through or had just emerged from an ongoing war and oppression when you interpreted their statements? Should I specify which one wants to answer? Either one, please.
So this is Catherine Black speaking. Earlier this morning, I think I already mentioned that what we considered is that the setting is not designed to, it's not an interview about their psychological symptoms. And that there are a whole lot of factors that could play into what is reported, what is not reported. It may be the attitude of how empathetic was the person interviewing in that case. There's a whole lot of factors that play into it. What we, based on our expertise clinically and in Istanbul protocol guidelines, are of the opinion that there's more likely to be under-reporting in that setting, because we know people avoid, for a whole lot of reasons, disclosing more than that they over-report and over-represent.
Thank you. Mrs. Duna-Prinsen, do you want to add something?
Well, I think your question is about whether we considered not the context of where the questions were asked, but also context of where they come from. And I think it was not, it was out of the scope of our report, because that was not a question for us. And so we just coded psychological symptoms. And as I stated earlier, we cannot comment on where they are from or where they are based on.
That's fair enough. I understand. You just did your job you were asked to do. Lastly, and this is my last question, on page 17 of the same report, you note, the psychological consequences and symptoms are coded based on the literal statements made by victims during legal proceedings. The findings are not based on forensic medical examinations conducted by a psychologist. You further state that no statements can be made about the medical condition or the validity of the symptoms. Now, yesterday, during cross-examination and direct examination, you have stated that you confirm that the symptoms described actually do not reflect or recognize psychological disorder. So, given this limitation, my genuine question is, how can your conclusions be understood by the court? Sorry, or rather, how should they be understood by the court?
This is Catherine Black speaking. I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but we looked at this sample of victims and found, as we describe, that they report consistently the symptoms that are widely known from the literature. And as I said, that's not a surprising finding. I think we were, or I was at least, slightly surprised that it came up so clearly from interviews that were not designed to elicit those symptoms.
Yes, I think we can only repeat ourselves in answering this question. Yes.
So just as a general evaluation.
Yes, and what I said earlier, from a medical perspective, this has value, and the way the symptoms that are mentioned by the victims during a legal proceedings, the value you have to give them in a legal proceedings, that's not up to us.
Understood. Thank you very much, Ms. Duna Princeton and Dr. Black. I am done with my questions, Your Honors.
Thank you, Ms. Sharametti. The Krasniqi defense, Mr. Bayezu.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Princeton, Dr. Black. My name is Victor Bayeshu, and I will ask you some questions on behalf of Jakub Krasniqi. Ms. Princeton, your report has several mentions of factors contributing to underreporting of symptoms, correct?
I'm sorry, which report are you referring
The
to?
report, the April 2025 report has several mentions of factors contributing to underreporting of
Yes,
symptoms.
that's correct.
For instance, I'll give some examples. It's exhibit V35 at page V6, V12, V20, and V21. Ms. Princeton, your evidence yesterday, and for the record, the reference is page T26234, line 24 to page 22623, line 10, was that you routinely use the Istanbul Protocol, which provides medical, psychological, and legal professionals with guidelines in how to examine victims of torture, how to conduct examination, and how to report the findings. Yes?
Yes, that is correct.
Could we have on screen, please, DJK 01479 to DJK 01703? At page DJK 01580. Further down to paragraph 348. Further down. Yes, stop. If I can read an excerpt from paragraph 348 of the Istanbul Protocol. It is important to recognize that some people falsely allege torture for a range of reasons. Others may exaggerate a relatively minor experience for personal or political reasons. The clinician must always be aware of the possibility and try to identify possible exaggeration and fabrication. And 7 lines down in the same paragraph, if the clinician suspects fabrication, additional interviews should be scheduled to clarify the inconsistencies in the report. Family or friends may be able to corroborate details of the account or events. So you will agree that the protocol emphasizes that clinicians must be always aware of the possibility of exaggeration and fabrication, yes?
Yes.
And the protocol provides the steps that should be taken in instances where exaggeration or fabrication is suspected, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
And where there is exaggeration or fabrication, it follows, doesn't it, that there is a risk of over-reporting in some cases, just as there is a risk of under-reporting in other cases.
Yes.
And one way an experienced clinician determines if there is underreporting or overreporting, or if the report is accurate, is by interviewing the individuals, or by carrying out additional interviews with family members, isn't it?
If you have reason to suspect fabrication, you could schedule additional interviews. That's what the protocol states.
Yes. And as far as your April 2005 report is concerned, that was not done by either of you.
You mean the expert
By
reports?
the expert, the 2005 April, the report for this case.
2025. That is correct, because it's not a medical legal investigation of individual victims.
The owners would like to have a MFI assigned to this page of the protocol, just one page with this paragraph.
Which page?
This is page DJK 01580.
All right. Please assign an MFI to that page. Yeah, we'll add that to a previously MFI'd document.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is page with ERN DJK 01580, and it will be added to 1D00260, but we will add .1 to it because it has a different ERN than MFI.
Thank you.
Thank you. The protocol recognizes the possibility of exaggeration for personal or political reasons, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And an asylum claim would be one such personal reasons which would cause an individual to exaggerate and fabricate symptoms, wouldn't it?
It could be a reason, yes.
Are you aware that from 1989 to 1999, at least 350,000 ethnic Albanians left Kosovo and applied for asylum in Western Europe, including Albanians claiming to be Kosovars?
Sorry, do you mean if I know these figures?
If you are aware of a very large, very significant number of Albanians who left Kosovo.
Yes, I'm aware.
And given this context, did your methodology include any steps to verify whether the victims in this case had previously made inconsistent asylum claims or were subject to credibility findings in immigration proceedings?
This is Mrs. Brinson speaking. Are you referring to the expert report still?
I'm referring to the expert report, and in particular to the methodology that you utilized to prepare this expert report. Did this methodology include any steps to have an independent verification whether the victims in this case had made inconsistent asylum asylum claims? Did you look into their asylum history?
No, we did not, because that's beyond the scope of the questions that were asked to be answered in the report.
But you would agree that the Istanbul Protocol, being a guideline, as you said, in preparing such report, has a requirement to look into instances, into the possibility of exaggeration.
Well, I'm going to object on the same basis. The witness has made it clear now multiple times that the Istanbul Protocol doesn't apply to the expert's report.
Sustained?
In fact, your report relies solely on self-reported symptoms in legal testimonies without an independent verification of the victim's backgrounds. Ms. Princeton, it's a question for you.
Can you repeat it?
It's a more general question, not related to the Istanbul Protocol, whether it would be correct to say that the report relies on self-reported symptoms in legal testimonies of these victims without independent verification of these victims' backgrounds.
Yes, that's correct.
And the symptom matching approach that you described yesterday and today, that means comparing victim files to literature, to specialized academic literature, cannot distinguish genuine trauma from exaggerated or fabricated symptoms, yes?
Yes, that is correct. And I think I will be repeating myself if I say that it's not up to us to decide what value the symptoms that were named in this legal proceedings by the victims.
But my question was whether the methodology that you use can distinguish between a genuine trauma and inflated or exaggerated, fabricated symptoms.
If in the medical legal examinations we perform, so that's not the same as the expert report, we can and we do, of course, because we use the guidelines. However, I think it's also very important to read aloud the sentence you left out of your readings of paragraphs 348, because it says that the clinician should keep in mind, however, that such fabrication requires detailed knowledge about trauma-related symptoms that individuals rarely possess. So, of course, I cannot, I don't know if there's any fabrication or, because we didn't do a medical legal examination. So for this expert report, I cannot state on that.
The extract from paragraph 348 that I read out to you is actually under a heading in the report. It's heading number 12, variability and inconsistencies in the history. It's not from a section of the report which is about the medical examination. But my last question is this. Would it be fair to say that one of the challenges faced in preparing this report is the inability to assess whether symptoms were overstated for a secondary gain such as asylum?
This is Catherine Black speaking. I think, again, that we are maybe repeating ourselves, but that was beyond the scope of this report to assess that. And you refer here to the Istanbul Protocol, as we've now a number of times explained, that it applies to a guideline for an individual medical legal examination, which the reports from April 2025 is not. And we state in the report that, as is described here, the fabrication is, as my colleague just said, is something that clinicians must keep in mind, but it's requires detailed knowledge about the trauma-related symptoms that individuals rarely possess, and that we, from our clinical experience, and I think from the very fact actually that the UN made that whole Istanbul Protocol, but that we know that it is hard in general to elicit symptoms and from victims of torture, that it requires actually a protocol for specialists across all disciplines, from the medical to the psychological to the legal, to for it to be op tafel te krijgen, to get it onto the table. So knowing that it's necessary to have this Istanbul protocol, it's there because it's hard to get evidence there. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a protocol.
But the protocol,
Yeah.
thank you, but the protocol, and I again quote from the evidence, yesterday's evidence of Ms. Prison, is a guideline on not only for medical examination, it's a guideline, and that's your evidence, how to examine victims of torture, how to conduct examination, and how to report the findings.
Yeah. And our report from April 2025, as we've said, it's a descriptive report. So what it describes is, these are the general symptoms from the literature, in which the Istanbul Protocol itself is one of the most important references because it already summarizes that literature. And we describe with the data that we have from the files, with the limitations that we've discussed, we describe that those symptoms are reported. And our expert opinion is that because the setting in which those symptoms were reported is not designed to report those symptoms, and because we know it's very hard to get people to report symptoms, it's more, we think it is more likely that it's an underrepresentation of the symptoms than an overrepresentation.
Thank you, Dr. Black. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beyezu. Redirect, Mr. Laws.
Yes, I do have some questions, please, Your Honour.
Go ahead.
For the first, we're going to need to move into private session, please.
Private session, please, Madam Court Officer.
Your Honors, we are now in public session.
Mr. Princeton, you have been asked today about the possibility of mistakes in translation, and it's pages 11 to 12 of today's provisional transcript. Can I ask you this question? Have you read the 3 reports in this case?
Yes, I
And
have.
have you identified the mistakes that occurred to you as you read them?
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much. You were asked about the contribution made by others, and I'll take them in turn. Your colleague Jet Steen, you were asked about at page 19 of today's provisional transcript. You've told us about her contribution. Is there anything in the report that she could have contributed to that you don't agree with?
No, there is not.
You were also asked about the contribution of your colleague Dr. Para at page 24 of today's transcript. Is there anything that could have been contributed by her that you don't agree with in the report?
No, as I stated earlier, we wouldn't have had this report if we would have disagreed.
Finally, have you been asked any questions in this courtroom but by anyone in any of the proceedings that you felt that you, Ms. Princeton, were not competent to answer and made you want to say to the questioner, no, you'll need to speak to Dr. Para about that? Have any questions of that kind been asked of you?
No, there have not. It's a joint report, joint examination.
Yes, thank you. Those are all my questions, Your Honour. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Gaynor?
Thank you very, thank you very much, Judge Smith. I just have a couple of questions for each of you. The first, if I could direct it to you, Ms. Princeton, and it concerns the 2 reports from 2023 and 2022. In each of those reports, I think you say in the introduction, you say IMO adheres to the Istanbul Protocol guidelines. So am I correct in understanding that you drafted those reports in accordance with those guidelines or not?
Yes, it is in accordance of the guidelines.
So the 2022 report and the 2023 report were drafted in accordance with guidelines?
Yes.
Now, I see in footnote 1 to the 2023 report that you cite to the 2022 version of the guidelines, and in footnote 1 to the earlier report, you cite to the 1999 version of the guidelines, a document which I think is considerably shorter. My only question is, was there any difference in your approach between the 2 reports, the one based on the 1999 guidelines and the one based on the 2022 guidelines?
No, there was not. It's a new condition of the report, which is lengthier, but there's no change in the guidelines on how to conduct this legal medical examination.
Thank you. Now, just a couple of short questions about the 2025 report, which either of you can answer. And the statistical analysis in the first part of the report, if I'm correct in understanding, is of a generic nature. I just want to bring you to a couple of examples. On page 4, it says, in Kosovo, this was already put to you by counsel for Mr. Vaseli. In Kosovo, nearly 65% of the population experienced traumatic events during the war, leading to approximately 200,000 to 400,000 traumatized individuals. Now, in that sentence, I'm right in understanding, am I, that this trauma could have been caused by any party to the conflict?
it's not specified what the sources are.
Right. So when you were presenting these items of statistical analysis, they don't depend in any way on the identity of the party to the conflict that might have caused the trauma in some way.
So the first part of the report is a review of the literature. That is not a statistical analysis by us.
Yes.
So, and the reference, it is reference to which literature that specific number, that specific number of 84% references. You have the reference to the full scientific article in which you could find the statistical analysis in their literature that they did. But I would have to see that full reference. But it's a descriptive study. It's not a. It's an observational descriptive study. So they're describing the number of the percentage of PTSD victims that they find.
Yes. And for example, on page 7, it says, referring to another report, 17.1% of Kosovar Albanians exhibited PTSD symptoms, and you're not suggesting in any way which party to the conflict may have been in some way the cause of those symptoms, are you?
No.
Yes. Now, in the second, but actually, if I can stay with the first part of the report on page 13, you say, a study conducted 10 years after the war in Kosovo reveals that war-related widowhood, combined with single motherhood, significantly increases psychopathology, including somatic symptoms, depressive symptoms, PTSD symptoms, and anxiety symptoms. You refer to a report by Marina and Emil Kamp, possibly 2 reports by them. Do you happen to know, without looking at the source material, was that study conducted in the context of widowhood or single motherhood caused by the acts of any particular party to the conflict?
I can't answer that without the specific reference. Perhaps Karen can. I think we could look it up. I think it's unlikely that they would describe that, but it's because it's medical literature.
Yes.
So it's unlikely that, but it's possible depending on what sample they've chosen in each study.
Right. Now, in the second part of your report, where you are relying on information provided to IMO by VPPs through the Victims' Council, and you make a number of statements, and I just want the record to be absolutely clear about this. You say, just for example, you say on page 20, many victims, especially indirect victims, report a negative impact on their families and note the adverse effects of not receiving justice or closure. Now, where you're talking about victims there, you are referring exclusively to the victims whose material was provided to you by Victims' Council, is that right?
Yes.
And so that second part of the report, all of the assertions there are exclusively based on that material.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Judge Gaynor. Any follow-up, Mr. Laws, to Judge Gaynor's questions?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
From the SSBO, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Mr. Puste, Mr. Dixon?
No further questions, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, Ms. Sharmeti and Mr. Baez.
No further
All right.
questions.
We've reached the end of your testimony. I'm sure you'll be glad to know that. And we thank you for being with us for your testimony and for sharing your information with us. Ms. Prinzen and Dr. Black, you are excused now, and we once again thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honors, I do have that reference now, and it's as I had called the document up, the full range for the document that is now MFI'd is DKV 1755 to 1775. That's the entire chapter with the sources at the end listed as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Your Honours, while I'm on my feet, could I ask in relation to the schedule for submissions on these reports?
We're going to make oral submissions today. We've seen your previous objection filed in writing, and we've heard prior to beginning, I believe we're fully advised, if we want to make a submission, we'll take a short break and you come back and you can make a submission.
Well, Your Honours, what I was going to request, if I may, is as Mr. Laws has tendered the reports already, we have responded initially that we be given a short time, only a few days, to supplement those submissions in writing, so we can examine the transcript and have the time to do that with a short reply from Mr. Laws if he wishes. But it can be done in a very concertinaed fashion, just so we have the good order of the time to do it and that we don't miss anything in that process. I would ask your indulgence in that regard.
Mr. Laws, do you wish to be heard on this?
Well, we'd inclined to be supportive of that application. It's quite a detailed topic. The report covers many, many pages, and it's going to be very, very difficult to perhaps focus on each of the details that may be raised by the defence. We'd submit it's going to be better done in writing.
Are you going to include in that writing which of these MFIs, or if all of your MFIs, are to be admitted?
We will include in our written submissions the material that we want to have admitted, and it will include all of the material that we have asked to be MFI'd. But we will be opposing at least one of the documents proposed by the defence.
Okay, let's see, guys. Two things, Mr. Dixon. You only used one page of that document. Why do we want to put all of it in? Why not put the page you actually used?
Yes, it was only to ensure that the part which I read, which was a summary, which is further explained thereafter, can be considered, so that the summary, which does try to encapsulate everything, can be expanded and looked at if necessary. But the main point will be the summary, because that's what was put and that's what the experts commented on.
Well, we will grant you until Monday, everybody. You will grant you till Monday to file your objection. I assume it'll be a consolidated position by
Yes.
just one document.
Yes.
And a reply by Thursday. And please go over that again and make sure that we don't need 30 pages of material. If we need one page plus the summary, that's 2 pages perhaps.
Yes.
You can name those and we'll try to admit those.
Yes.
We will consider admitting those.
Yes, Your Honours, we'll be guided by that to keep it as focused as possible. Okay. And also our submissions will just focus on what has come up through the testimony to add what is there already, so they're not going to be lengthy.
So you will supply by Monday and your reply by Thursday, Mr. Laws.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Okay? So
thank you, Your Honours.
I believe then we are completed for today. Is there something else? No? Okay.
May I raise one short matter,
Certainly.
please? Your Honour, after the decision on Monday by the appeals panel in the Charlotte case, it's our intention to submit some adjudicated facts for admission. That was foreshadowed in our filing F03205 of the 28th of May at paragraph 9. We said that we intended to do that, but of course we couldn't do it until the decision was taken by the appeals panel. It has now been taken. It's open to a court to take notice of adjudicated facts from that decision. May we have until the same deadline next week, Thursday, to submit that motion, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
May want to reply to his additional submission.
Yes, Your Honour, indeed, because
So
there was an issue raised about that yesterday.
So
as
that
you
will
know.
be Thursday, so it will be by Christmas, no. It'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, by the following Monday.
Yes, that would be the... Yes, I am reminded that we don't have the confidential judgment yet. We're filing for permission to have that today. So we're going to have to get that in order to be able to review it.
I doubt that I'm sure you'll have that by the time this
Yes.
material comes. If you run into a problem, you can let us know.
All right, we'll come back to you if necessary. Thank you, Your Honours.
Anything else anybody has? We will see you here on Tuesday then for the status conference to make sure basically that everything is ready for the defense preparation conference to be held after the break. So thank you for your attendance today, and we will see you on Tuesday.
All rise.